Hey there, it's Hillary, and today I'm going to be doing the book unhaul challenge. I decided to do this challenge mainly because I had already pulled off a stack of books that I was planning on unhauling anyway and taking to my local Goodwill, so I figured why not do the challenge and see if I can challenge myself to pull some more books off of my shelf that I'm not going to get to. This was originally created by Lala over at Books and Lala. I will try to link her video down in the description, although the two people that I originally saw it on first were Emma from Emma Books and Hannah from A Clockwork Reader. So those were the videos that I saw originally, so I'm going to attempt to do the challenge. Most people are pulling off multiple books from each of the 10 categories. I'm going to see how it works and we'll go from there. The first challenge is to unhaul a book that you rated low. I have taken off 2 and I think there's one more on my shelf that I'm going to pull off. The first one is The Mothers by Britt Bennett. We read this book for our book club a couple months ago and I absolutely hated it. I hated everything this book was about. I hated just everything. I think I gave this book 2 stars because I felt absolutely horrible giving the book a 1, and I actually did like the cover. The cover was really pretty. It kind of drew me in. But after I started reading, the book was absolutely horrible. So I hated this one, and no. And the other book I read last year during Booktubeathon, and I struggled to get through it, and that was The Call of the Wild by Jack London. I had no clue what this book was about when I started reading it, and I did not enjoy this book at all. A lot of people I know had to read this book for school, and I didn't, and I figured it's a really short book. I'm gonna just knock through that book in one day, and this book took me so long to read because I hated it that much. And the last book that I'm going to unhaul for this one, I don't know why I've been keeping it on my shelf actually. It's a poetry collection called Mothering, and I absolutely hated this as well. I read this last year, I think, and I was really in a mood to read some poetry, and I was like, oh, I'm a mom, this is gonna be great. And the poems in this book were just not, like, I felt like some of them weren't even about motherhood. It was so weird. I actually did only give this book 1 star. And I was not a fan. The next category is a book you changed your mind about. I struggled with this one because I felt like there weren't too many books that once I gave them a review, I either read them again and had a different feeling for, or I haven't thought about it enough to change my mind, or even when I think about it, I still feel the same about it. So the only books that I could think that I wanted to change my mind about were Me Before You and 1+1 by Jojo Moyes. I really wanted to read Me Before You, and then I felt like after I read a lot of reviews, I really felt like it was a book that I wasn't going to enjoy. So I really just lost all desire to read it, and I'm unhauling the other one just because I don't know. I don't really have a desire to read that either. When I read a lot of reviews for Me Before You, I've read like a lot of negative comments about her portrayal of like being handicapped, and I guess that really just kind of it didn't sit well with me, and I just really don't have a desire to read any of her books, unfortunately. The next category is a series you won't complete. I am unhauling 2 books for this one, and the first one The first one is Talon. I'm really going back and forth on whether I want to unhaul this one or not. I got this one from like a surprise pack that I ordered, and this series is like 5 books long, and I've never read it. I kind of want to, but I'm afraid a little bit of getting hooked into another series that is really long, because I have so many series on my shelf that are so long and I haven't started reading them yet. So I almost feel like it's better to just not start another one. And since I only have 1 book of this series, I don't know if it's a series that I want to start. And the other one is Left Behind. I have the first book of the Left Behind series. This was like one book that I first got when I started going to the Goodwill and doing book shopping, and this series is so long, like 15 plus books, and honestly I just don't have the desire to read this series anymore either. So those are 2 series that technically I haven't started, but I know I'm not going to finish because I don't have the desire to even read the first book, so I know that I'm not going to be able to complete that series. The next category is a book you DNF'd. I have only DNF'd 2 books ever. One of them I can't get rid of because it's not mine. So the only other one that I have that I could get rid of for DNFing, I received an ARC of Finding You. You can still see I have the bookmark in it. I really tried. I gave this book 125 pages and I hated all 125 pages of it. I could not stand the main character. This book is sort of about human trafficking or sex trafficking. The main character gets kidnapped and she gets put into this situation where she has become a slave or a sex slave or like something along those lines. And honestly, the main character in this book, I have no pity for her. I unfortunately wanted her to die. I could not stand her. I tried to push through this book. I just kept telling myself that I received this as an ARC. I wanted to read the full thing so that I could give it a review. I finally decided that it wasn't worth torturing myself over trying to read this book, because I felt like I read enough of it that I could give them a review of how I felt about what I read. So this was actually the first book that I DNF'd, and it's one of only 2. So I think I will take my bookmark out and this one will be gone. The next category is a book that you have multiple copies of. I actually do not own multiple copies of books. There, I think, is one that I did not think of previously, but I don't think I want to get rid of it. I accidentally purchased a physical copy of a book that I owned on Kindle, but I don't think that I want to get rid of the physical copy because it was a book that I enjoyed, but maybe that's being selfish and not sharing the love. I don't know, because I own it on Kindle, so maybe that's being a little selfish. Alright, so I decided that I could take it off and I could get rid of it, even though I really did enjoy it. It's Never Never by Brianna Shrum. I have this book on my Kindle, so it's not like if I wanted to read it, I wouldn't still have it. I really did enjoy this book though. I love retellings, and this is a Peter Pan retelling where Captain Hook is the main character. It's told from his point of view, and I really enjoyed it. But like I said, I do own it on the Kindle, so if I wanted to read it again, I do have the ability to. And the other one that I'm going to unhaul for this category is The Dreadful Tale of Prosper Redding. I do own another copy of this one, and I actually offered this one to all of my friends and none of them wanted it, so I'm going to unhaul this one. This one was actually one of the ones that I had already set aside to unhaul because I didn't need 2 copies, and they're both exactly the same. They're both like the hardback that doesn't have the sleeve on the outside. I'm gonna go ahead and unhaul that one. Like, I don't even have 2 different ones. They're 2 exact same copy. I ordered one and I received 2, and the company didn't want it back. The next category is books that you know that you will never get to. Now, I looked through my books and I pulled off quite a few that I know that I will never get to, and some of them I had already taken off of my shelf to unhaul anyway. I have Real Mermaids Don't Hold Their Breath. This one is a middle grade and I don't think I will get to it because I don't have the desire to read it. Bound, I have no clue what this book is about. At the time that I got it, I wanted to read it. It sounded good. I don't have the desire to read it anymore. It was also one of the first books that I got when I started collecting, like my book collection. I've mentioned before that I was pretty much an exclusive ebook reader, and then I started going on Goodwill trips and slowly gathering books for my collection that I have behind me. So some of these are books that I just grabbed when I originally started collecting books, and I just don't want to read them anymore because my reading choices and reading tastes have grown since then. City of Bones by Michael Connelly. I have no clue what this one is about. I got this one at a library sale, and I really don't enjoy thrillers as much as I used to when I started reading. I used to be like, that was all I read, was like thrillers and detective novels and that type of thing. I don't really read as much of that anymore. I mostly read fantasy, although I do read sci-fi, I do read thrillers, I do read mysteries, I do read contemporaries. I do read all of those things, but the thing that I read the most of is fantasy. And this is another one. I believe this one is a fantasy, but I got this one in a book subscription service, and at the time I was like, oh, that sounds really cool, because I didn't have as many books, but now that I have so many books, I don't think this is one that I'm going to get to. The next category is book that you got because of the hype. Now, I know that this is not really a hyped book. I feel like, for me personally, I got it because I saw a lot of people reviewing it, and I was like, oh, I want to read that. And that's Codename Verity. But I'm going to be totally honest with myself. I'm not going to read this book. I didn't pay very much for it, thankfully. I found it at the Goodwill, actually. But I know that I'm not going to read this book. And if I do, I'm probably not going to like it. Because if I'm being totally honest with myself, I don't really like historical fiction. And that's what this book is all about. It's a historical fiction. I keep trying. I keep going for historical fiction, and I keep trying to read classics, but I'm just not a fan of them. I'm gonna take this one back off of my shelf because I know I'm not gonna read it. It's just gonna sit there and it's gonna stare at me, and if I do finally read it, I don't think I'm gonna enjoy it. And maybe that's being unfair, maybe that's not giving the book a chance, but I know my taste in books pretty well. The next category is a book you got because of the cover. I will say this first book, I didn't buy it because of the cover, but I have been holding on to it because of the cover. I have thought about unhauling this book multiple times because I really don't think that I'm going to read it, but the cover just looks so cool that I haven't wanted to get rid of it. And I honestly just kind of want to stick it back on the shelf because it's just so cool looking. It's supposed to be like a book with a hole burned through it, and then you can see this house with like a sunset in the background. It just looks so pretty, but I really don't think I would read it. I really want to put it back on the shelf. If I take another one off, can I put that one back? Another book that I did get because of the cover, it was actually because of the title, if we're being totally honest. It's The World According to Mr. Rogers. I grew up on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and I was like, oh my gosh, a book by Mr. Rogers, that's gonna be so good. And it's not what I was expecting it to be. I do have a couple pages flagged, but out of the whole book, I've only flagged 3 pages. Like, it's a book, like, it's full of quotes and, like, very little about his life. Like, I actually was interested in hearing about his life and about Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and all that stuff. It was so little of that, and it was just like full of quotes. And they're not even quotes that I was like, oh my gosh, that's so good. Like I said, there was only 3 out of the whole book. There was only 3 quotes that I was like, oh my gosh, that's a good quote. Yes. So I'm gonna take that one off the shelf. I'll probably write down the 3 quotes that I really enjoyed and then unhaul. The next category is books that you know nothing about. I feel like I've already unhauled quite a few that I know nothing about. That whole pile that I was like, I'm never going to get to these. I didn't know anything about any of those books. I do think I can pull off a couple more, though. These are 2 more books that I got at the library sale, and they're both thrillers, they're both mystery. I don't think I'm going to get to these because I don't really read this type of book anymore. These are both adult fiction. I do read some adult fiction, but I don't read as much adult fiction as I do read young adult. So not only do I not read this genre, which is like the thriller mystery type books, I don't really read adult fiction either. So I'm going to unhaul those, and I don't know anything about those other than they probably deal with death, because most like mystery thrillers have people dying. So I think that fits. The last category is a book that you did not buy. I have 2 for this one, and honestly, I feel so guilty about getting rid of these. Neither one of them is a book I bought. I received them as gifts. This one I received as a gift from my grandmother. It's a historical fiction / classic. I don't think I'm going to read it. I don't think I'm going to like it. I think if I don't unhaul it, I might actually offer to give it back to her. And I'm not gonna lie, I might lie and tell her that I read it and I didn't like it. I know that I'm not gonna get to this. Like, I have too many things on my shelf that I want to read that I'm not going to just read a book because she gave it to me. And the last one is a monster of a book. This is a copy of The Greatest Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. I got this 2 Christmases ago from a Secret Santa. Our book club did Secret Santa, and I feel really guilty about getting rid of this one too. When I first started going to book club, I pretty much only read thrillers, and that's all people knew about me, is that I liked thrillers and I liked mysteries. And my tastes have grown so much since then. But so for my first Christmas, my Secret Santa, they got me 2 Sherlock Holmes books. And unfortunately, I don't really like Sherlock Holmes. I don't watch the show Sherlock. I don't watch any of those shows. And I don't really read mysteries and thrillers anymore either. Not only is this book really huge, it said it had 44 short stories in it. I am not like a Sherlock Holmes fan, so I don't think I would ever get to it. And honestly, I knew that I would never get to it as soon as I opened the package, but you can't be a jerk like that and be like, oh, I don't want this. So I was like, oh, thanks, this is so cool. I unhauled the other one like last year, and I've just been holding on to this one because I felt really bad about getting rid of the first one, and I feel really bad about getting rid of this one. This book is huge. It's taking up a lot of book space, and I know that I'm not going to get to it, and there's just no point in holding on to it when somebody else could be reading it and enjoying it, and it's just sitting on my shelf collecting dust. So those are all the books that I am unhauling. If you have unhauled any books recently, let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving me a like. And if you'd like to see some more videos by me, consider subscribing to my channel. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!